Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Bright-Headed Publishing Audiobook Book Club. My name is Kelly Morgan, and I am your host. I am really excited today because we're doing something a little different. We're doing a new segment called The Writer's Corner, in which I want to be able to feature those people who support authors like editors, publishers, marketers, proofreaders. And today I'm really excited because I really feel like I have a really seasoned pro that can answer some great questions, especially for me, for you too, y'all, but for me as well. CaTyra Polland is the CEO and founder of Love for Words, which is an editing boutique. She is a published author, she's a speaker and instructor, and creator of her own podcast, Editor Knows Best. She is also a poet and an editor, to add to all of those other things. She is currently working on a Right Wine and Quarantine special edition magazine featuring women who share stories about their experiences during COVID-19 pandemic. Wow, and that's not even all. There's more. She is the Rochester Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree and the executive secretary of the Rochester Black Authors Association. CaTyra created Writer's Paradise, a writing forum for current and aspiring writers and authors. Her most recent project is Editor Knows Best, an ebook that gives an introduction to types of editing, what to expect from an editor, and the importance of editing. Editor Knows Best, the ebook is available on her website, which is www.pollandllc.com, and all the links will be attached to the podcast, so don't worry about it if you didn't get it. When she's not doing all of these wonderful things, she actually has time to go to concerts, she goes to the beach, she travels, and she likes to spend time with her friends and family. Listeners, you guys, welcome CaTyra Polland. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. I appreciate it.
You are very welcome. I am very excited to talk with you and know that you're going to drop a lot of knowledge on all the listeners and all the aspiring authors out there that really don't understand what an editor does. I know when I started writing my first book and I was looking for an editor, I really didn't know what I was looking for. So I am really excited to kind of dive into that with you today and really find out all the different types of editing. And then of course, what you do. So, talk me through that, CaTyra. Tell us like how you became an editor and the type of editing that you do and how you got started.
Yeah, so I started Love for Words in 2017. A friend of mine who's a publisher was looking for an editor, and I did a sample edit for her, and the rest is kind of history. She started referring me to her publishing clients, and of course, I picked up volume and clients, so I've been doing it since 2017. I specialize in developmental editing, which looks at holes in your story, holes in your plot, making sure there's no redundancies. So, for example, you don't have the same reveal in two different places in the book. So you're not saying that, we learned that we were having a girl in chapter 7 and then again in chapter 20. Also making sure things like your characters' names are spelled the same throughout the book. So if you have Terry with an I, you want to make sure it's spelled the same way throughout the entire book. Also making sure that whatever messages you have connect with your target audience, that you're not leaving questions or confusing your readers. So if I see a word that's considered jargon in your field, but you don't explain it, I'll put in the comments, okay, what does this mean? Your readers might not know. You should probably put in some type of description of what you're talking about. Or, if there's an incomplete sentence, I'll ask you, what else would you like to say here? This isn't clear. You should work on filling this in to make sure that your point is getting across. And then also making sure that it flows well. So even with another client I work with, she wrote a home buying 101 guide, and she had lots of terms in the book that, the average person wouldn't know about throughout the text or throughout her manuscript. So I suggested she create a glossary. So those are also things that I recommend, while I'm doing my editing to make sure that it flows well. So those are some of the examples of what a developmental editor does. My genre that I usually do is nonfiction. I'm open to fiction as well, but my niche is nonfiction. So memoirs, biographies, self-help books, self-improvement, autobiographies, things like that. So that's my specialty. So that's my specialty, and that's how I got started.
Wow. So the editing process, I know, can be very tedious. I'm imagining going through somebody's work and making sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
Yes.
Walk me, when you get a client or when somebody comes to you and asking you about your services, explain to me what that process looks like and how you kind of walk them through that.
Yes. So the first step is to have a consultation by phone. There's also, before that, the client fills out a consultation form, which asks questions about the genre that they're writing, how long it is, what their budget is, also turnaround time, if they've ever worked with an editor, their expectations, all those important things that I need to know up front. And then we follow up with a phone call. And of course, I'll refer to that consultation form just to get more details about their project, make sure, it seems to be a good fit for us. I talk to them about much of what I just explained, what my background is, how I got started, give them some, I can direct them to my website so they can see testimonials and different projects that I've worked on. The most important part of editing is the relationship building. So again, that consultation is to make sure, I understand what they need and that I have the credentials and the experience to meet their needs as well. So if at that time, the conversation goes well, it seems like we would be a good mesh, then I offer a free sample edit from 1 to 3 pages of the manuscript that they're, looking to have edited. And I'll complete the sample edit, and then the author has the opportunity to get back to me and say, yes, this is what I'm looking for, or no, this isn't quite what I want, and I'm choosing to move on to another editor. So that's a simplified version of what that process looks like with Love for Words.
So are fees based on the length or volume of the project?
Yes, it depends on how long it is, and also depends on how many rounds of editing you would like. So it does vary per project.
So if somebody came to you and they wanted a sample edit and they liked your work, you would be able to then get back with them and let them know the cost and how long approximately it may take you to edit their work?
Yes. So yes, once they decide they want to move forward, yes, that's the next step. I give them, the estimate, and then there's also a contract that they would sign, and then we move forward from there. So yes, once they let me know they're interested, that's the next step.
Wonderful. So what is one misconception you can tell us that people may have about an editor when they're looking for an editor?
A lot of people believe that an editor will remove their voice from their manuscript. I know working with a lot of new clients and having consultations, they're afraid that their voice won't be maintained and that the editor is there to replace their voice. And one of the things I always tell my clients is, it's your book, not mine. So I can make a suggestion to you or a recommendation, but if it doesn't satisfy you, you can reject that. So as a professional, obviously, I'm using my expertise to help you make your book better. But at the end of the day, you have the final decision on what your book reads and what's included, what's not included, etc. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And that's something, of course, I work on all of my manuscripts, making sure that I'm not revising the book so it sounds like me or making recommendations because I like the way it sounds better, but that I have, an actual explanation as to why I feel like this would be better for your target audience, or this makes the book sound better. So I work very hard at making sure I maintain the author's voice. So don't fret about that if you're scared of that. And the other part of that is that's why I do the consultation up front as well, and why I also do the sample edit, so you can see exactly, my style of editing. And then at that point, and I do that up front to make sure we don't waste time, and there's no waste of money either, because if we do the call and you see the sample and it's not what you want, then we can both, go our separate ways without, you spending money and then me spending time. So that's, like I said, relationship building is the most important part, and the consultation is essential to, finding clients who pair well with me and making sure the clients are also interested in working with me.
Yeah, that's probably really important that you and your client mesh well together and that they're willing to take your suggestions or at least talk about them.
Right.
And have that relationship building. Within the industry of self-publishing, what trends, you've been doing this for a little while, what trends have you seen within not only editing, but with self-publishing as well?
Well, with self-publishing, not necessarily a trend, but just the reality of self-publishing is you have a lot of control. So, I encounter a lot of clients who have different professionals for their books. So I may be their editor, and then I only do the editing piece. I'm an editing boutique, so I do have publishers on my team. So I do the editing, and then I will connect them with one of my publishers. And I also have connections for graphic designers. So one thing I've noticed, of course, is that, you have all the control and you have to do your research. And the authors typically take the responsibility of that when they're self-publishing. So I would recommend that you do your research, make sure that the professionals that you're using are reputable, and always ask for samples up front. So I don't see that changing as far as self-publishing goes. So that is something that's important if you're choosing to self-publish, is making sure you are independent and you are self-motivated, and make sure that you are taking advantage of resources that are out there so you can publish the best book possible.
Right. What advice, if somebody is looking to maybe self-publish for the first time, they have absolutely no clue about even where to begin with an editor or even the industry, what advice would you tell somebody that says, I have this manuscript, I want to publish my book, what should I do?
Yeah, so one of the things I recommend is joining author groups, specifically on Facebook. There are probably millions of author groups on Facebook where you can join, and they post asking, are there any editors in the group? Are there any graphic designers in the group, formatters, publishers? So it's a very easy way to get information. So usually someone will post a question like that, and then there's hundreds of comments with people saying, yes, I'm a graphic designer. Yes, I'm an editor, etc. So you're able to go to their social media pages or their websites, take a look at their samples, speak to them, schedule a consultation. So that's an easy way for you to get connected to those in the industry. So I think that would be, I would recommend that as your first step. And then they also recommend even different websites where you can hire freelancers, like Fiverr. That one is pretty popular. So you could go to that page and find all of the professionals you need on that page, actually. So that, and then if you have authors in your personal or professional network, you can just reach out to them directly and say, how did you do it? What do you recommend? Who have you worked with? So networking virtually, in person is limited right now, but in place of that, connecting with your personal or professional network.
Yeah, a lot of Facebook groups do allow people to connect, as well as Instagram and even LinkedIn. Definitely. I'm finding is another great way. And I wish I would have known this when I started out as an author, because I did not know any of this. And so I'm really think it's important that if you're starting out, there's so many resources you can tap into.
Absolutely.
And different ways that you can get the information that you need. So I think that's great. So somebody had told me that they thought that the self-publishing market was oversaturated. Do you think it's oversaturated, CaTyra?
I don't think it's oversaturated. I think it's challenging to differentiate yourself. I think that's what it is. So there are millions of authors who are all doing the same thing. So you have to figure out how to make yourself stand out. So for example, for me, I did a client audit and just took a look at, who my clients were and what they all had in common. And I realized that 95% of my clients were CEOs. So I typically market to CEO authors who have a story to tell, CEO authors who use their books to further grow their networks and, gain more clientele. So that's my niche. So it's all about finding your niche. And then, like I said, I focus on nonfiction. So I usually pull in clients who are writing nonfiction because that's another one of, the way that I niche my editing background and my specialties. In addition, like I'm an author. So that's another way that I'm niche. So if a client comes to me, they know that I have experience with both sides, not just being an editor, but I know what it's like to work with an editor. I hire an editor when I write my books. So that's another way that I'm setting myself apart. So it's not oversaturated. It's just that we have to find ways to zone in on our target market instead of trying to market to everyone. Because I'm sure you've heard it, when you try to market to everyone, you market to no one. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is setting ourselves apart and finding out what makes us unique and finding our specific target market.
And trying to have a plan as well.
Definitely.
You're going to kind of have some type of plan. It may not be the complete plan, but you have to have some type of idea of what you believe you should do. And I think once you start that, you start on a journey and
Right.
you really don't know where it's going to take you.
Right.
And so I know that you say that your niche seems to be nonfiction, but you're open to fiction. So when you say that, fiction's a broad term. Are you looking at all types of fictions? Do you think that you lean toward maybe a certain type of fiction, like maybe women's fiction or fantasy or young adult? What do you think is your niche there?
At this point, most of my fiction experience is novels. So novels, I would say novels. I have done also edited in a comic book. That was fun. Only one, but I'd be open to that. But I think novels would be my fiction specialty if I were to have one. I enjoy reading novels. That was fun for me, and I would be open to those types of projects.
Great. Yeah, that's really cool. I like the idea that you are an author as well.
Yes.
And so tell me about what do you write? Are you a nonfiction writer?
Yes, I also write nonfiction, so that falls right in line. So my first book was Professionalism, What's That? And it covers the important things we need to know in regards to being employees and also employers. So it talks about conflict management, how to dress for success. It also talks about code switching and different things that we need to know, but that we don't necessarily learn in school. So it's really for either, students or those re-entering the workforce, those who want to start a business, who are either looking for a refresher or a one-on-one on how you're expected to conduct yourself in professional settings.
And that's funny that you say that, because code switching is a term that I'm starting to hear more and more in mainstream, right? And just mainstream business. So before, it was a term that was kind of only known by a certain group of people, is what I'm saying. Right. Now the term is becoming more used throughout corporate America.
Definitely.
So for those that don't know, tell me about code switching. I'm just interested on your thoughts.
Yeah, so code switching is basically either adapting or adjusting your behavior, your language, the way you look, the way you sound based on your environment or the people that you're around. So one of the examples in the book is I talk about even hair code switching, specifically for those of us who have kinky hair. In certain settings or in many settings, it's not considered professional. So a lot of us do straighten our hair, or we wear weave or things like that make us conform to what is supposedly professional and acceptable. So I talk about that. But the other part I talk about are the cons of code switching, because so often, especially for Black people in America, code switching is presented as mandatory. Like if you don't do it, you're not going to make it. Your options will be limited. You're not going to be successful. But I do talk about, again, the disadvantages of that. And for example, how detrimental it is that someone's hair could be cut because it's in braids, or because they're wearing, dreads, they can't participate in a wrestling match, and all of the different cases that there are of hair discrimination. So again, that is an example of code switching. And I just wanted to bring the light that there are negative elements of code switching, and that it's not always for the good. And it can be very disheartening to be told that a natural part of yourself is not acceptable.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a very interesting term that I'm hearing more and more that I maybe didn't hear so much, say, 5 years ago.
Right.
In the corporate America. So it's just interesting that you brought that up. So I'm interested, you had mentioned an editing boutique. So for those that don't know what an editing boutique is, tell us what that is.
So for me, the editing boutique just means that is all that we focus on. So I'm not a publishing company. I don't do any of the publishing piece. I don't do the ISBN or copyright or formatting. I only do editing. So I wanted to make sure that I presented that clearly to the public. So that's why I deemed it an editing boutique, because we only handle that component of the process.
So you had mentioned that you collaborate with others, maybe publishers or others. And so do you all share clients together? Do you all try to work together and refer clients to one another?
Definitely. I have a very strong referral network. So when I have a client come to me for editing, I'll ask, do you already have a publisher or a graphic designer? If they don't, then I'll refer them to the publishers and designers on my team. And then, if it's a good fit, they'll work with them. If not, then obviously they can, look into other options. And they also do the same. When they get publishing clients, they'll send them to me for the editing piece. So we definitely work together in that way.
Right. And that's another way, again, to set yourself apart.
Yes.
So if somebody wanted to reach you and they wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yes, you can visit my website, www.pollandllc.com. That's Poland with 2 L's. All of my social media handles are on there. Instagram, it's @PollandLLC, @PollandLLC for Twitter as well. And I also do have a Facebook page, facebook.com/PollandLLC. The best way is via email, Poland@PollandLLC.com. But all of my contact information is on the website. And I just wanted to plug, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the Editor Knows Best book. It's just a brief ebook. And again, it outlines the different types of editing that there are. Also the expectations of an editor and what not to expect from your editor. So again, for those current and aspiring authors who are afraid of the editing process or just don't know about it, I would recommend you download it on my website. It's actually free. So you can go right to my website and click shop, and you can download that if you're looking for a 101 guide about editing.
That is fantastic, because I don't think people realize how many free resources are out there regarding the process. And I think that a lot of people just thought that editors do just the grammar.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. The periods, the commas, the quotation marks, but there's a whole lot more to editing than that. And so if somebody was looking for a different type of editor, I'm sure those are in your network as well.
Yes. Yep. I have other editors that I can refer to and editors that I work with on my books. So that is something I can connect them with as well.
That is absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, you said you have your podcast. You say that you interview authors on your podcast. How do you find them? And if somebody's interested, to be on the podcast, how do they do that?
I usually find my guests on Facebook. So again, there are lots of podcast groups and people will post, hey, I'm looking to be a guest. And then I can follow up with them that way. And to sign up to be a guest, you can go to my website. Right on the front page, there's a sign up link there. And again, I have questions outlined that I'll ask you. It's a very informal conversation, and the listeners are new authors or current authors, also other literary creatives like editors and publishers and literary agents. So it's a really great audience for authors who are looking to grow their writing network. And you could just go on my page and sign up there.
Podcasting is another great marketing tool, as I have found out. I think podcasting's fun, so I like it. So, and I'm all willing to let people know about your podcast, because I'm a firm believer in there's an audience for every author, and there is an audience for every podcaster. Right? So the more that we network and share, the better off that we all are.
Definitely. And the podcast is Editor Knows Best, which is the same title of the ebook. So if anybody's searching that, the direct website so you can listen to episodes is anchor.fm/Editor Knows Best.
And all of her links will be in the information for the podcast. I will definitely put all the links so that you guys will know how to reach her, listen to the podcast, go get the ebook, go get her book, reach out to her if you need her service. I think it's great. CaTyra, thank you so much for being with me here today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Definitely, we're going to have you come back in the future and talk more to us about the things that you're doing. It sounds like you're really busy and you have a lot going on. So I'd love to be able to reach out to you again in the future and catch up with you and see where you are at that point in your life, especially after this pandemic stops. How we're all going to keep networking, because right now we're all virtual, but one day we'll be, face to face again, and that will also be fun as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for listening to Bright Headed Publishing Patio Book Club. Until next time, keep writing.